Yo, what up, man? Welcome back to the Wellness Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Cummings. And listen, we are getting into the book, Mental Wellness Literacy. We're doing a book review. I promise you all I was going to try to touch on one thing out of all of the chapters in the book. So, once again, my book, Mental Wellness Literacy, as you can see in the back, it is available. But listen, I'm giving y'all the hookup because on this YouTube channel, we're going to start this off. We're going to start this YouTube journey off. We're talking about everything that's inside of this book. All right, so we're going to get started today. We're going to hop out of chapter 4 within this book. Chapter 4 talks with gaining control of the mind, which is, I think, is a very powerful concept, right? When we're talking about making sure we're keeping ourselves out of psychiatric hospital venues and psych wards and different things like that, and keeping our mental health at a proper level, at a stable level, so that we don't have to keep constantly returning back to the psych ward. We don't have to keep constantly returning back to therapy sessions and different things like that. It all revolves around gaining control of our minds, right? It all revolves around us having a proactive approach towards mental health, right? So we're gonna get right into it, man. We're going to chapter 4, and one point that I want to bring out that I thought is extremely critical, right? So let's deal with it, right? According to research, this is out of chapter 4. According to research, Cleveland Clinical Research, the mind processes over 70,000 thoughts each day using 1 billion neurons traveling at over 300 miles per hour, right? I'm going to say that one more time. The mind processes over 70,000 thoughts each day using 100 billion neurons traveling at over 300 miles per hour. Right now, when we think about that, the first thing that comes to my mind is like that. Those are a lot of conversations that's happening throughout our minds, right? That's like a whole lot of conversations that's taking place throughout our mind, really dictating what we're thinking about on a day-to-day basis. And what has to happen is we have to have some type of control on that, right? We have to have some type of grip on that situation, because it's so many things that we're thinking about. And not only that, those thoughts are programming the way we think, right? Those thoughts are really starting to program how we process things on a day-to-day basis, right? Another part that I brought out in this book is it talks about this guy that I did this research on this book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, right? What to say when you talk to yourself. Now, one interesting thing about me is I talk to myself a lot, right? I like to have conversations with myself. Now, you might think, oh, this dude crazy. You know what I'm saying? He like to talk to himself. He crazy as ever. If you seen me out in society, you probably would see me having a conversation with myself, not necessarily out loud, because I do have a bit of a balance, but I really grasp the concept of talking to myself. And I think people um, should grasp that concept, right? I think we should take that and grab hold of that thing, man, because the only voice that you're hearing on a day-to-day basis, right? The main voice that you're hearing on a day-to-day basis is your own voice. Is actually your own voice. Even though you're hearing the voices of people around you and the different things that's going on around you and outside of you, and you're hearing the voices of influence leaders, uh, you're hearing the voices of motivational speakers, whatever that is, the number one voice that you're hearing day in and day out often is your own voice, right? So I spend a lot of time talking to myself. I spend a lot of time encouraging myself and building myself up, right? But I want to get to this part. This author, his name is Dr. Shad, in his book titled "What to Say When You Talk to Yourself." And Shad, this man is a PhD. He said in this book, the author explains the mind is like a mental computer that is programmed from childhood, right? He described the mind as being a computer. Wait 1 second, I want to grab something for this point, right? And he talks about the mind being similar to a mental computer. And one thing I think about when it comes to that, right, is a phone, right? This is an iPhone, and this is basically a computer. And the things that we do with our iPhone right? When we first purchase them, we take a lot of pictures, we take a lot of videos, we download a lot of things, right? I'm a guy, I'm always watching a seminar, I'm always watching a podcast, I'm always buying an ebook and different things like that. And I began to, I would download a lot of those things to my phone. I would download a lot of those files to my phone, those pictures, videos, so on and so forth. And what had happened is I would, you know, all of this stuff would be on my phone, right? And what's so significant is now I'm going on this journey and I'm building this YouTube channel using my phone. And I have so much stuff on my phone, right? It's difficult to kind of record videos and put up new content day in and day out because I always got to find some kind of way to make space on my phone because I have so much things, I have so many things programmed and downloaded into my phone. And when I think about that, sometimes I think about our own personal life, right? Our own personal uh, life and our own personal mental life. A lot of times, the way we was raised, right? Some of us came up in two-parent households. Some of us came up in single-parent households. Some of us came up in foster care systems. Whatever it was, when you was coming up, a lot of the things that happened to you and a lot of the things that you went through was programmed into your mind, right? It was programmed, it was saved, it was stories. We have a lot of experience and different things that we went through that we actually remember that's inside of our mind that dictate how we show up today, right? So as I was thinking about the concept with this phone, a lot of times it comes to a point to where we have to update our phones, right? We have to go through this process. I know iPhone does this on a regular. They send you an update, and what happens is they're adding new things to the phone. They probably adding another camera um, tip, or they're just adding things to the phone, right? So the phone goes through an updated process, and it's up to us to go back and look at our phone, look at the data that's in our phone, everything in there, and start to clean that stuff out so that our phones could operate smoothly. It can operate properly, right? We could watch videos, we could be on YouTube, we could listen to podcasts. Our phone is not doing a lot of buffering because we are maintaining our phone maintenance, right? And a lot of times it's the same thing with our minds, right? Sometimes our mind have to go through those mental updates. Sometimes we need to take a step back and really evaluate what are the things that we're thinking about on a day-to-day basis, how we're showing up in the world today, right? So sometimes that mental update might have to look like therapy, right? It might have to look like you joining a small group, some type of small accountability group, or different things like that, to really bounce these things off of people to start to see the things that we're thinking about from another person's perspective as it pertains to being within a small group, right? But we always have to go through this mental update. We always have to go through this season where we start to clean out all of the old files in our mind, right? And I think that is a daily life, a daily thing, or not even a daily thing, but something that we would always be doing for the rest of our lives, right? When we grow in age, right? When we go from being 30 years old to 40 years old to 50 years old, there's always going to be a time period where we have to take a step back and really evaluate what's going on in our minds and really start to update the way that we think about things, right? Even I know for today's time, we're living in a world of technology. Technology is moving at a very high rate, right? So when I was coming up, it was we was at the beginning stages of technology, but technology wasn't so big, right? What I want to say, like things like AI and different things like that wasn't on a very high level. That wasn't incorporated into the jobs and different things that we're encountering on a day-to-day basis. But now, AI is like top level. One of the number one things that people are talking about and dealing with. So I have to update my mind, right? I have to update the plan and how I'm going to show up in a world that's full of technology and full of AI. So that means I have to start learning new things, right? I have to start undergoing new learning process to learn how to use these different devices to keep up with the times, right? So in this regard, talking about the mind being similar to a computer and it being programmed, a lot of times we just have to stay up on keeping our minds updated, right? We have to stay up on keeping our minds clear so that it could flow properly, right? So that we could begin to gain ideas and new thoughts and healthy thoughts on a day-to-day basis to keep our lives moving at a solid pace, right? Which brings me to my next point that I talked about in this book, which deals with this is on page 33 well, I said God created our minds to operate based on the words that we program them to, right? God created our minds to operate based on the words that we programmed it. Well, let's look at a scripture, right? Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7. It tells us that whatsoever a man thinketh in his heart, that shall he be, right? And that's actually one of my favorite scriptures because that saying is very true. Whatsoever you think, whatever things that you constantly think about on a day-to-day basis, how you see yourself, how you view yourself, eternally, whatever those things are that you think about a lot, eventually that is the person you're going to become, right? So we want to make sure that we are engaged in the mental battle of seeing ourselves through the lens that God sees us through, right? I'm more than a conqueror, right? I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me, right? There is nothing that I can't do. I can do all things through Christ, right? So learning how to practice the concept of thinking about ourselves from a positive lens, thinking good thoughts about ourselves, and not dwelling on the negative thoughts time and time again, right? Just remaining in a pattern of thinking negatively, remaining in a pattern of bad thoughts concerning ourselves. And you know how that is, right? We never speak well about ourselves. We constantly say, "Oh, I can't complete a task, and I can't do this. I'm not good at that." Well, what is it that you actually is good at, right? And how could you be more intentional about dwelling on those things, right? It's okay to be honest about where we are. It's okay to be honest about where we stand, but at the where we end up and where we show up. But at the same time, we don't want to remain in that mindset, right? The whole concept of this is us being able to build the muscle of self confidence, right? Build the muscle of self improvement, build the muscle of us being able to speak well over ourselves, right? Because, like I said in the beginning, the main voice that you're hearing on a day to day basis is your own voice, right? That is the main voice that you're coming in contact with throughout the day, right? So if we can get control of our own voice and we can get control of the things that we're speaking over our own self, then we would be well off. All right. So that's pretty much the episode today, right? Looking at our minds and programming our minds in such a way that it works to our advantage and not necessarily against us. All right. So once again, if you like this episode, if you felt like this episode was helpful for you, please hit the like and subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Next week, I want you all to tune back in for chapter 5. We're going to get into chapter 5 of the book, and we're going to talk about something dealing with that. And I'm excited to get to that. Man, listen, if this content is impacting you in any way, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, etc. All right. Once again, you all have a good week. Have a safe week. Keep your mind in a steady place and keep it together. All right. Peace.